From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We are joined, as always, with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holliday Jackson. Most importantly, you are you. You are here, and that makes this the stuff they don't want you to know.
Including that siren.
Yes, that should give you a feeling of breaking news. That should give you a feeling that what will be discussed in this week's Strange News segment is only matters of great import. And fellow conspiracy realist, as we always say at the opening of this, a lot of stuff has happened. My compatriots and I were just in Nashville, Tennessee for a thing called Podcast Movement. We had a live panel that we are very much looking forward to sharing with you in the near future. Do stay tuned for that. We did escape it relatively unscathed. Also, guys, I think I mentioned this off air. I'd like to thank my parents for not telling my extended family that I was in Nashville, because they would have tried to drag all three of us to some sort of church.
I would like to punish them for not doing that, because that would have been wonderful.
You miss church?
I didn't know what kind of church.
I think Matt misses church.
I do. I miss
casually,
the community.
You know, it's funny you say that. I think I've mentioned before that I was briefly going to a Baha'i faith gathering thing with my daughter because of her friends. And it did remind me what the community aspect of church is and why it's kind of important and why I think it's such a draw for so many people.
Well,
they get it.
Oh, sure.
And if Aunt and Uncle Bolin would have been there, I mean, my God, can you imagine?
Again, I did not specify what sort of denomination or belief system it would be. We could talk about it off air if you would like. Yes. Yeah, there is something to be said, for the power of community. People want to be some part of something bigger than themselves, whether we're talking about people who just want to be more active in an HOA for some reason, whether we're talking about people who want to volunteer at a local homeless shelter or help with elderly literacy. I think volunteering is amazing. I think everybody should do it more often. But even if you are at the tippy top of a corporate structure, you may find yourself wanting to be an agent of the greater good. And that is where I propose we begin our very first story for today. You see, fellow conspiracy realists, another company has called for a ban on cigarettes. You remember cigarettes. They're the things that made you look cool in movies. And they're the reason that mascots like the Marlboro Man had such a high historical turnaround because they really were smoking a lot. Can you guess which company I am referring to that has issued a ban on cigarettes or called for it?
I feel as though it's going to be an ironic answer. At least in the Alanis Morissette version of irony, where it's like the cigarette company that doesn't want you to smoke cigarettes. Is that the deal?
Yeah, it's like a spoon on your wedding day or something like that.
Right? The rain on your wedding day. You want the spoon. That's what you use to feed each other cake.
Or a plane crash when you have finally overcome your fear of flying.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. I think you're absolutely correct, Noel. And I do know that I kind of set you guys up for that one because we all know very well. We talk a little bit about the show before we go on air, surprise. And it's true. Philip Morris International, a gigantic company in the world of commercialized tobacco, has recently said that they will stop selling Marlboro cigarettes in Britain within a decade. And it additionally called on the government of the United Kingdom to ban the sale of all of its tobacco products. This is kind of, I was trying to think of a good analogy. This is not a one-to-one comparison of, say, Papa John's or Domino's calling for a ban on the sale of pizza pie. But it is kind of like them calling for a ban on the sale of cheese because they're cutting out a very specific, defined thing. Also, Big Cheese, longtime listeners, you well know, Big Cheese would never let a pizza company betray them like that. So I was thinking what we could do is talk about a little bit about how this came to be, a little bit about what it means, and a little bit about how sincere or insincere we think this might be. To answer these questions, we're going to have to first learn just a tad bit more about Philip Morris. It is huge. It is so huge. Right now, it's a Swiss-American company, which might surprise a lot of people. Philip Morris products are sold in over 180 countries. Just to really drive that statement home, there are less than 200 UN-recognized countries, meaning Philip Morris is in the vast majority of countries. The most famous brand they have is Marlboro, and that's when people talk about big tobacco, they're talking about Philip Morris and a couple of other similar companies. But these guys are a giant, or this entity is a giant.
A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're so old too, right? They're like one of the first players in the game. They've been around forever.
Yeah, it's funny because I, like a lot of other people, hopefully, thought Philip Morris was a U.S. company just because here in Atlanta, we live so close to historical tobacco country. But Philip Morris started in London in 1847 with a tobacconist named Philip Morris. And later his son established what would become the company we know today. So first off, this gets a lot of headlines. It's not a conspiracy to say that smoking tobacco is harmful for you. And a lot of people have successfully quit. A lot of people quit and picked it up. A lot of people consider themselves social smokers, et cetera, et cetera. And for decades, companies like Philip Morris engaged in some pretty insidious stuff, up to and including conspiracy to keep people puffing. So if you hear this news, you might be at first initially excited. It sounds like overall a good thing, right? This company appears to be going against its financial bottom line to help people have a better quality of life. However, hopefully, fellow conspiracy realists, we all know that you have to dig in when you see feel-good announcements like this from any corporation. Why just the UK? Why just that out of 180 countries? Well, it's because the business probably wasn't doing that well in the United Kingdom. Smoker numbers are plunging there, and there have been increasingly restrictive laws. Like you don't have to be a smoker to enjoy this, but if you ever want to learn a little bit more about how other governments treat smoking, from like nanny state to laissez-faire, just look at the laws that govern how cigarettes can be packaged. In the UK, they have to be sold in plain packaging. In some other countries, every pack of cigarettes you buy has like a graphic depiction of ruined lungs. In South Korea, this is one of my favorite examples, you can see this, not to get too like filmy about it, but you can see a 3-shot of these two parents arguing, and then a little kid who's like waist high looking up at them and trying not to cough as the smoke inundates their little face. That's what you look at every time you smoke a cigarette in South Korea. So the push that we're reaching a Gladwell-esque tipping point probably with tobacco that you smoke. And already investors have started taking tobacco out of their portfolios. Some international investment companies have said, hey, our portfolio is going to go with a tobacco-free policy. And there was something interesting. The CEO of Philip Morris today, a guy named Jacek Olczak, said to The Telegraph that the UK government should treat cigarettes like gasoline-powered cars. And gas-powered cars are due to be banned in that country, or the sale of them, starting in 2030. So Philip Morris itself, in a statement, very recently said it can see a world without cigarettes. Before I unfold some revelations here, I want to check in with you guys. What do you think? On the up and up?
Well, I mean, they own what? Views, right? They're like snooze, tobacco alternatives.
I don't know about Views. Do they own Views? I know they own Vive and a couple other like tobaccoless or smokeless tobacco alternatives.
Non-combustible, I believe, is the term that's used.
Okay, yeah. Here they call them e-vapor products and whatever the other one was. IQOS Vive. I don't even know how to say it. But yeah, I know for sure Philip Morris as a company is investing pretty heavily in like the future of nicotine that isn't in smoke. At least that's what it seems like.
Yes. Yeah. The company wants to generate more than 50% of their net revenue from what they call smoke-free products.
Got it.
And they want to do this by 2025. So get 5 years ahead of that UK ban, which will probably be followed by other bans in other countries. Although anybody who's traveled to Europe probably has noticed that rates of tobacco smoking are already pretty high, in different countries, like in France, etc. And this is interesting to me because it looks like they're getting some great press, but we have to remember this is from an industry that actively conspired to hide the potential health hazards of smoking for a long time. And they also, in 2017, they established something that they called Foundation for a Smoke-Free World. And this foundation, remember what we said about cutesy, innocuous names, right? Names that sound like you can agree with it as long as you don't understand what it's about and who funds it. This foundation has been in a lot of trouble and a lot of controversy since its inception because it claims to be independent, but everybody from the World Health Organization to probably your friends on Reddit are pointing out the massive conflicts of interest with a tobacco company, funding this health foundation. The American Cancer Association, or ACS, even said, quote, "This attempt by Philip Morris International to paint itself as a public health partner is manipulative and dangerous." So they keep going. You can read their statement in full. But I started wondering, what's the long play here? Because corporations, as we discussed in our 2-part series on lobbying, they don't have a conscience. They're not meant to. That's not part of their programming. Corporations also don't have an amygdala, so they can't really experience fear. They can experience self-preservation, right? And this is obviously a self-preservation move, but to what end? I looked at some other things, and I looked at some things that are happening as we're recording. They're not just trying to step away from cigarettes. This is as tempting as it is to say, like, wow, this is like, Exxon saying they're not going to do fossil fuels anymore. It's not quite the same thing, because at the same time they're doing this, Philip Morris is investing in medical technology that is, you can make a very solid argument that it is taking advantage of the medical situations this company has created. Like just recently, again, the same time, that official statement hit headlines like end of July, right? And we're recording August 9th. August 8th, Sunday, Philip Morris got in the news because they have been trying to buy ownership of medical technology that assists with people who have trouble breathing or suffer from conditions that could quite possibly be related to smoking. This is a very strange form of integration, isn't it? From stem to stern. It's kind of like a company that makes lard investing in, a proven diet program. Philip Morris raised its bid to buy a company named Vectura. Vectura is something that a lot of us may not have heard of. They make drugs to treat respiratory illnesses. Full stop. That's what they did. They're going to pay £1 billion, or that's what they're trying to pay, to take ownership of this. And just that move already sent some financial waves around. So with all this in mind, that's the rough lay of the land. We could do a whole episode on big tobacco. It's weird that we haven't yet. I have to ask, what do you think is the ultimate play here? I would assume it's self-preservation. And B, do you think it will work?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. I know, I can see through the matrix right now, you guys. Bear with me. So the new products that they're promoting, at least Philip Morris International, not Philip Morris US, which is Marlboro. This is Philip Morris International.
Well, it's also Altria, right? Altria, yeah.
Altria is like the mothership, and then Philip Morris International is over there, and then the one in the USA is the Marlboro. Marlboro?
You're nailing it, man. Keep going.
Okay, so the new products, the one, the IQOS or whatever, IQOS, it's a tobacco heating product where you literally shove a cigarette into it and it heats it up to where you're just getting the vapors from it instead of actually burning the tobacco. What else can you put into something like that and smoke it, guys?
Opium, sage,
marijuana.
Isn't Marlboro talking about getting into marijuana?
Of course. Why wouldn't you? They got the infrastructure.
Yeah, Altria, this massive tobacco company, why would they not start growing just metric tons of cannabis and selling it with their products that just heat it up the way, there are tons of vapes out there that people have been using for years, specifically with cannabis, that do that exact same thing. The same thing with their Vive or whatever they call it, where it's just got the liquid nicotine. Do the same thing with the liquid cannabis that you can get right now all over the place in all these states in the US and across wherever they're sold legally and illegally. Dude, yeah, that's exactly what they see in the future. They see weed. Yeah.
And there's something else that happened. They also just bought an inhaled drug specialist company named OTI Topic. That has been successful. Health charities are up in arms because Vectra makes asthma inhalers in addition to drugs. And with this, I propose that we pause for a word from our sponsors, who are probably not Philip Morris after I just brought this story in, and we'll return with more strange news. But before we do, I would personally love to hear from people who are quitting smoking or working to quit smoking, and people who are currently smokers. There's no judgment on our end here, but I would love to hear what your experience is and what your take is on Philip Morris's activities. What do you think is at play? Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com. You can call us directly, 1-833-STDWYTK, and we will be right back as long as big tobacco doesn't get us.
And we're back with more strange news. This one's a doozy. If any armchair internet sleuths out there, a real good opportunity here to make some cash off of a hardcore right-wing website. The website in question is called The Gateway Pundit. And they've got like headlines like Marxist Oregon governor signs law allowing students to graduate without proof they can read, write, or do math. Would love to dig in, hear more about that. But that's, the vibe of the site in general. We're not doing any, no political judgment here. But this is definitely one of these sites that just borderlines on propaganda. Like, it's just so over the top that I have a hard time taking anything on it particularly seriously, whatever my political leanings might be. But this site has put its money where its mouth is in an interesting way, specifically as pertains to the perceived election fraud that many are still discussing or up in arms about, in terms of the Trump campaign losing to the Biden now administration. And this website, the Gateway Pundit, who claimed that they report the truth and leave the Russia collusion fairy tale to the conspiracy media. That's their literal tagline. It's a doozy. They are offering to pay $10,000 to anyone who can successfully, on their terms, debunk the notion that the election was stolen. And they're leaning heavily on a theory that they refer to as drop and roll. It's not stop, drop, and roll, mind you. It's just drop and roll. And what drop and roll refers to is this idea that a number of states, when Trump was winning the count on election night, suddenly, this is a quote from the creator of the website, Jim and Joe Hoft, the creators, suddenly, quote, tens of thousands of unexplained votes came pouring in. They go on to claim that there are ratios represented that are impossible and don't make any sense. They've got some examples for Georgia, saying President Trump was up by 57% to Biden's 42%. Here's the drop. Then dumps of unexplained ballots given to Biden 4 hours until Joe Biden takes the lead. And the roll is then, for the next 53 batches of votes counted, every single vote batch had exactly 50.05 to 49.95% victory margin for Biden. These
That's
ratios...
not exactly. Just interjecting, that's not exactly.
Precisely. There's a lot of false equivalencies made in these claims. They claim these ratios are impossible. So again, I'm less concerned about the actual political side of any of this and more just the notion of someone saying, we'll pay you what would be a quite meaningful number to most anyone if you can debunk something that is inherently undebunkable because it's already based in kind of fatuous math, and you know what I mean? Like it's clearly a bit of a bait and switch, or I don't know exactly what you want to call it, but I wanted to just throw it to you guys and see what you think this is. Is it just a publicity stunt? Like, what would the barrier to success be on the part of these folks to quote unquote debunking this?
Oh, yeah. So I see a couple possibilities. That's a great question. First, this is clearly being offered because they will not consider it debunked. If you look at the way that they're handling fact checking in general, this is a moving goalpost argument. So what that means is that if you want the 10K, you will probably say, okay, here are these basic things that I understand. And then they'll say something like, well, your sources are bad, right? Or they'll say something like, well, the real issue is this, and you have to debunk this to do that, or to, win your award. So there's not really going to be a way to prove this because they're suffering from confirmation bias, I would argue. They've started with a conclusion, and anything that runs counter to that conclusion will be cognitively deprioritized. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps it is a good faith argument, and perhaps they simply have not looked into all the available sources. But that's, maybe I'm being cynical, fellow conspiracy realist, but that's my assumption. It's kind of like, this might be a weird comparison, but in a way it's similar to the famous quote unquote challenge from James Randi, perhaps one of the most well-known skeptics, hardcore skeptics of the modern era. He offered, I believe it was $1 million to anyone who could prove to him anything that he considered supernatural. Notice, he considered supernatural. And he only made this offer because he was convinced that no one would reach his barrier of proof. And sometimes people react adversely to Randi, but one thing that Randi and his organization had in common with the Gateway Pundit is that they are only making this offer because they are convinced that they will never have to pay that money.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm seeing. You can read a lot about the outlet over thegatewaypundit.com/about, I think.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the article in the Washington Post where I found this story by Philip Bump, which is a great name. He puts it this way, and I really appreciate this. He says, this is unfalsifiable. If you say to this person, there were a lot of absentee ballots because of the pandemic, and they say, oh, but were there? You just sort of have to shrug. Okay, man. And it's true. And it's the kind of thing we've been talking about, even with like cult deprogramming, or how do you talk someone off the ledge who has gone down this QAnon rabbit hole, or any other kind of, very ideologically driven kind of groupthink type situation. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to do it without either triggering that person and making them feel like you think they're stupid, or just making them angry, or you getting angry. And all you can really do is just shrug and walk away because you're not speaking the same language, which is a language that's based in, facts and reality. I don't know, man. Well, I'm not trying to make a big soapbox thing here at all about any political stuff. I just think we talked about this, and I think it'll be a good one to have in the feed in our panel that we did at Podcast Movement, which was about the idea of how do you separate conspiracies, actual conspiracies, from these, mislabeled conspiracy theories. And then there are things like this that are clearly what the term conspiracy theory was meant to label. And it's a term that kind of like in some ways discredits the thing, but it also within that conspiracy theory, there are little nuggets of truth. But you got stuff like this that's just, it's like throwing all these tables and data and things and then using them in just completely misleading ways that just don't make any sense and don't really line up with any kind of provable reality. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's something that I appreciate. And I try to highlight this whenever I'm in conversation with people who have serious, in good faith questions or concerns about the official narrative of the ongoing pandemic. First, if someone is making an argument or asking a question in bad faith, they don't.
That's right.
I want to be very clear here, folks. They don't give a what you say. They're not listening to you. And it's a trap to waste your time. If you want to talk about some genuine COVID conspiracies, why don't we talk about the idea of information warfare and the fact that forces in Russia and forces in China have been pushing COVID conspiracies, even easily debunked ones, across social media under names that sound authoritative but have not a whiff of credibility. Be very, very careful with that. Also, my favorite, you guys know who bought Washington Post, right? It's Nash Holdings LLC. You know who owns that? Jeff Bezos. These are the kind of things people should be talking about. But I completely agree with you all. Like, this is not, I am glad to engage in a conversation or a dialogue about anything if I think it's in good faith.
In good
faith.
I'm
grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful for everybody who wrote to us and said, hey, I have some serious questions. There's some really messed up stuff going on. There's some contradictory information that I'm getting. The CDC seems to change its mind pretty often. What do I do? What would you do? Those are great questions. And there is nothing wrong with asking questions. It is one of the greatest things the human species is able to do. And I applaud it every time I hear it, again, in good faith. This does not seem to be that. This seems at best a circuitous way to get attention, or a circuitous way to maybe convince people to buy into whatever Russia told these people to repeat. And I know that might sound harsh. And again, I think the truth is more important than the fuzzy feeling of validation.
The only thing I would want to add to that, Ben, because I do agree with you on almost everything there. I'm looking at that about page on their website. Mm-hmm. And like many of these news outlets that have kind of been created over the past, I would say probably 2 decades, even maybe 3 decades, because I would include Fox News in here as one of them. News outlets that have been generated as a response to a perceived liberal bias within the news outlets that exist, the large ones, right? So I think for a lot of people, including perhaps the person who wrote this, the person who's putting this out, I would say they very likely believe very much that they're correct in their assertions.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I think they would say they're doing it in good faith, right? Or they believe they're doing it in good faith, which is a really tough thing to even grapple with, because there's so many factions and camps now that believe they are right or on the right side of the argument, and it's very difficult to bridge that gap. And I love that you're at least open to it. And we did talk about that in the panel. I do think that's hopefully where everybody listening to this right now wants to be. We want to come to the table with that Socratic method and at least discuss. And in this case, I also think you're right, and that this is a way to get attention on a growing news outlet that isn't quite where it wants to be yet.
They're pretty big. They got like 1 million hits a day during the 2016 presidential campaign, 1 million unique users.
Then I retract that statement. Oh my goodness!
But a million's not enough if you want to reach all 7.8 something billion people.
That's right. True. That's right. I mean, and I would argue, I think we're all close to aligned on this, but I don't know that this is in good faith. I think this is trollish behavior in many ways. I think they believe something along the lines of what they're putting out there, but I just don't. I feel like they're just trying to muddy the waters in a way that discredits their enemies, as opposed to actually, quote unquote, truth telling. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's easy to do because, like you said, you can flip the script pretty quickly. If someone calls you on one thing, then you just kind of divert the conversation to this other thing that then they must prove to be true as well. I've seen it. It's a rhetorical power move. If you're talking to somebody that you disagree with and you question them on something, then they question you on, well, do you know this thing about this other tangentially related thing? Because if you don't, then you don't know what the hell you're talking about the other thing. And it just becomes this, like, musical chairs, this like factual musical chairs that is impossible to win. So ultimately you will just get tired of it and walk away.
And I really love the point you made, Matt, where we're talking about the sincerity or self-perception of people. Jim Hoft is the editor. He got kicked out of CPAC, by the way, because of his beliefs regarding mass shootings in the U.S. So I believe there is sincerity, as far as I can tell, on the part of the authors here, on the part of the editors. But yeah, moving the goalpost is what's called an informal fallacy in debate or in the art of rhetoric, which is very much an art, not a science. Don't be fooled. And this is the idea, like, Noel, you're describing also whataboutism, where you say something like, hey, I don't think the guy who drives that ice cream van should throw poop at people. And you're like, yeah, well, what about people who knock over porta potties, fight the real enemy, shout out to Sinead O'Connor, etc. Like, those are very clever ways of changing a conversation into a different conversation when the facts are not on your side. And this is not necessarily something insidious that people do. The human brain is hardwired to want to be right. It exists in a constant state of sunk cost fallacy. I would say if we're ascribing the most sincere motives to this challenge, then what we're seeing is a doubling down of confidence. Just saying, we know we're right. We know we are right. And we have such certitude about this that we're going to put our money where our blog is. That's what's happening. And that's not necessarily bad, right? People do that. It's just, in this case, it's incorrect. What they perceive as facts are not
It's
facts.
like one of those claw machines, It's like you can maybe get your claw around the stuffed animal that you want, but the moment you try to lift it up, that thing's going to loosen and it drops right back out of your reach. It's really kind of like a fool's errand.
Only 9 out of 10 times, or however many the machine is set for.
Yeah, exactly, because it is set, and so is this. But it's an interesting, I don't know, it's worth conversation. It's certainly something that I haven't quite seen before in this exact way.
Noel, are you going to do it? You going to go for the 10K?
No, I don't want to talk to these people. I got other stuff to do.
Ben, I think you could do it.
Ben, you could do it. You're a master of this kind of stuff. If anyone can do it, it would be you.
We'll use a fake name. I'll go in as Max Powers, astronaut with a secret, my go-to AKA. That'll make it look legit, right? Yeah, I don't know. Let's give it a try. And I'd love to hear if somebody does engage and to see if they win, If you do win, take us out to Dave & Buster's.
Well, before we do that, we have to take another ad break, hopefully from Dave & Buster's. We would only be so lucky. And then we'll be back with one more strange news.
And we're back, and we are jumping over to this fantastic Business Insider article that's just, it's positive, guys. We're going to end this thing on a positive note.
Love it.
Yeah.
Here's the headline. A 2,000-year-old fast food joint discovered by archaeologists in Pompeii will open to tourists this summer. Oh, thank goodness. Finally.
Yes.
Do you know how hard it is to find food in Pompeii when you're going around there looking at all the historic?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was pretty, honestly, dude, it was a pretty hopping spot before the volcano. You know what I mean? Like, you had a thriving market. You could get all sorts of snacks.
Yes.
I haven't been recently, but I heard it's a very different vibe now.
You haven't been there for a couple thousand?
Do they still have the like mummified remains of the people frozen in horror kind of surrounding the?
Yes. Yeah. Before we get away with ourselves, I know we're joking here, everybody. It's not an actual working, you're going to go there and order fast food at the fast food joint. It is the equivalent of a modern fast food joint from that era. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. You can look at pictures of it online. Again, this is a Business Insider article. There was a Telegraph article that I believe was the originating one, but I didn't want to sign in or whatever I had to do with that paywall. So I'm giving it to you from here, so you don't have to do that either. But you can see pictures of it, and it really does look like the front of any little food stand or something that you might encounter probably outside. If you're walking around New York or another large city, it's like these beautiful painted frescoes on the front of it, and what looks like just kind of holes in almost a counter where food was served from. It's really, really interesting. The pictures of chickens on there.
Right. I remember with a story where they discovered it initially. We maybe talked about it on Ridiculous History or maybe another Strange News episode, but the latest is they're making it into like you can visit it and tour it and stuff?
Yes. It's going to be open on August 12th, at least according to the Telegraph.
Cool.
And it's known as the Thermopolium, mm-hmm. And that means hot drink counter. Ooh, fun. It's like a cafe, right? Or a coffee shop. But it's just really interesting stuff, and it's weird to think that 2,000 years ago, humans were doing many of the same things that we do. And society really doesn't look that different over time. The technology improves a bit, which changes it moderately, but really everybody is living, working, eating, and a place that sells food, any kind of restaurant like that, is going to exist throughout time. Whether it's a tavern or this little food place. And the whole reason why we're talking about this, guys, is because something else happened. Some news broke over the past week while we were gone. It's a report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPOC, and it's the first time that they've really crunched the numbers as an organization in 7-8 years. I think 2013 was the last time they did a real accounting of, hey, where are we compared to the goals that we set at the Paris, actually that was before the Paris Climate Accords. So that was, the Paris Agreement was 2015. So this is 2 years prior to that. They're going back again and saying, hey, where are we? And I'm going to tell you the headline from the BBC article that I read for this. Climate change. IPCC report is, quote, code red for humanity. It is pretty grim. Got to be honest with you. It feels like that show, was it The Newsroom? I think it was The Newsroom, the show that had on a deputy from I don't know where it was from. I remember the scene clearly. It's a deputy from the EPA or somebody like that saying, yeah, climate change, like humanity is messed up. A person has already been born that's going to die due to catastrophic failure of the planet or something that.
Oh, yeah.
So we've been talking about this for a long time, just to see the raw numbers, to see the reporting from highly respected scientists, experts in their fields saying, guys, if we don't act yesterday, as in a long time ago, the oceans are going to be so high. They're calculating a rise of 2 meters, like the ocean will rise 2 meters by the end of this century, and possibly a 5-meter rise by 2150. And as I'm reading this article, as I'm thinking about that possible future, obviously I'm biased here. I'm thinking about my son and whatever legacy down the line if he has children.
Sure.
And it doesn't mean I'm not thinking about everybody else. It's just that's where my focus is. I'm imagining you guys in 2,000 years from now, 2,000 years. Well, let's say 4021. I'm imagining a team of automated submersibles that are going out and they discover an ancient thing that they're not really sure what to call it. It seems to be some kind of food generating store. It seems to have the word Applebee's on it, and it's just off the coast of Colorado. And they're trying to figure out what it was and what it was used for. But it's now going to be open to the public after they bring it back to the surface. No, that's what I'm seeing in my mind right now of humanity after the Great Flood, I guess.
It's not unfounded, if you're a fan of speculative fiction, which is some of the best fiction in the world. I guess you could also argue all fiction is speculative, but whatever, different show.
Well, in this case, it's speculative nonfiction, right?
It's speculative, soon to be nonfiction. But it reminds me of a great novel called A Canticle for Leibowitz, which I highly recommend. Also, Matt, you're spot on. This is what's the name of that Drake album? If you're reading this, it's too late. That's what they should have called this report. It is too late. There are ways to mitigate the pattern, but there are no longer ways to stop it. And you can go two ways about this. You can say it's everybody's fault, which is misleading, or you can say it's nobody's one fault, which is still a little misleading, but a little more accurate. I mean, think about it. It's the prisoner's dilemma writ large across a globe, right? If one company does something that would be, forget that. If one country did everything it could, it might lose out, especially with some of the bigger countries like the US, like China, right? And this, I would argue, was stymied. The possibility to get a little bit ahead of the terrible things on the way, which again, they are unstoppable. If you were in the US, I would start looking toward inland properties next to sources of potable water. Further north, the better. So Great Lakes is about to skyrocket in terms of real estate in the coming decades, not centuries, decades. So what we have to think about is like this progress or the possibility of fixing this problem or mitigating it was tremendously stymied by the Herculean effort that corporations put into passing the blame on you as an individual. It doesn't matter what you consider your politics to be. It does not matter what you think about the thought-terminating cliches that were thrown around, like climate change. It's happening. It's on the way. It's coming to a town near you, like some apocalyptic world tour that happens in multiple places at once. And the corporations could have done more, but they went for short-term gains as a trade-off for long-term expenses. And the people in charge of those corporations aren't going to be alive, or they're not going to be worried when the real problems hit the fan. So maybe Pompeii is a lesson, maybe we're getting a preview of what a Chipotle will look like 2,000 years from now, right?
That sounds
It'll
good.
sell same buckets.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's the buckets. Yep. Or a Ruby Tuesday in their salad bar. So
I actually only eat food out of buckets. It's my preferred delivery mechanism.
Man, that's why KFC is so great, you guys. The buckets.
Good for you, too.
This is just what I was thinking, you guys. The they in this situation of, as in stuff they don't want you to know, is literally anyone, any entity that wields power and influence within the global economy, right? Because like you said, Ben, it's been everybody, and the whole don't drink out of straws, drive an all electric vehicle, all that doesn't really amount to much at all, because the stuff they don't want you to know is that everything has to change, and it is one giant machine that we're all cogs within, right? And every one of these companies is a different, piece, a large component of that machine. So when you think about what the scientists are saying in this report, we have to stop coal. no matter what. Like, one of the major things we have to do is stop coal production, stop using coal to generate energy.
Yeah.
And if you're going to actually do it, you say, yeah, okay, let's do it. Let's do it next week.
Mhm.
All the individual people that work or are in some way associated with one of these plants, their families, or the actual acquiring of coal in mines, anybody that works in the towns where that's the primary source of income. So that's one. Those will be the initial casualties, right?
Sure.
But then where does the rest of that power come from? Because coal provides a lot of power, at least in the United States and several other places across the world. Where do you get that from? Then it just becomes this massive problem with the casualties growing and growing. But if we don't do something, the casualties are magnified, several times. And that's literally just like that one thing is just the tip of this giant melting iceberg that we all find ourselves in, because then you have to hit meat manufacturing and industrial fishing, or whatever you want to call that. Just the shipping industry in general, of sending goods all across the oceans, across the continents, the cars that we drive, the computer servers and processing facilities, all the damn lights everywhere. I didn't mean to say like that, but your air conditioner, my refrigerator, it's like, y'all, I'm scared. And I just want to go I just want to take a nap.
Yeah, well, you should be. Well, you can nap in a cool place, man. Because we're going to see a feedback loop. It's already happening. As those global temperatures rise, more people will rely on power-hungry technology to stay alive. So air conditioning use will skyrocket. At the same time, sources of power. I don't know. I have like two big thoughts about this without TED talking. Hopefully not too late. One, there's a very good argument that the human race overall is a heist film on planet Earth, or like a long con on the planet, because planet Earth will be probably okay. Very much does not need humans. If you look at what has happened in other great extinction events, if this reaches great extinction level, what you see is that some form of life has survived. The human, as an inherently self-interested organism, that's not good news for the human, but it is, I guess, good news for the very rare thing, the only known source of proven life in the observable universe. The report that people are talking about, though, this is very important. They outline, if you read the actual report, best case scenarios. Those are not going to happen. You can read them for fun. Worst case scenarios, which are also probably not going to happen. What's going to happen is a slow descent, a world that ends not with a bang, but with a whimper. And we got to give space just to say this. Imagine if you were a country, a developing country. You have been victimized by great powers for a lot of your history. And now you're undergoing something like your own industrial revolution. And the people who made the world the way it is now are telling you that the rules have changed. They are, speaking of circling back, moving the goalpost for you. Great callback. I'll tell you my thoughts. Yes.
And it worries me, and it even scares. I'm afraid to say this on a podcast, seriously, because I don't like what it means, and I don't like that I think it.
Ooh.
I don't think the problem is the humans. That's my dog. See, the problem's the dogs.
That sounds like that's the dog equivalent of snapping fingers at an open mic. All right, yeah.
So I don't think the problem is the humans. I think it's capitalism. I'm serious. I think capitalism is the problem. And that really does scare me, because it's everything that I've known. I don't know if I'm just susceptible to whatever propaganda has been fed to me, ever since I was born. But it does feel like this need to always grow a business, to always grow a customer base.
There's no cap. There's no limit. It's just like insatiable by design.
Because I think if you took that away, I think humans might be okay and be able to live. But it doesn't mean that one of the other, major ways of doing business and running an economy would be better necessarily. It's just, I think that one in particular is dangerous.
Well, first, humans weren't evolved for there to be this many. That's just true. But secondly, yeah, we're talking about organization of complex systems. If we want to be soulless about it, if you think of capitalism as a concept, it is only an ideology, and an ideology after a certain threshold of zealotry becomes inherently dangerous. And so I completely agree. And that leads to the second thing that I thought. I was racking my brain. I was like, how do you get the people with the influence to make a difference in this? How do you get them to listen? Because I am sure I am not the only living thing that has ever felt a little bit irritated when I hear a tremendously wealthy human say something like, well, the difference starts at home. I eat a plant-based diet. My car is entirely electric. There's a privilege to that. Like, a lot of people in the world would probably be fine with being vegans if it were easy and not expensive, right? And when I say expensive, before anybody sends the email, I mean in terms of time and accessibility. Food deserts are a real thing, right? Crushing populations and food insecurity are real things. So it's very self-unaware when people who are at the top of the current global human hierarchy is very unaware when they say, well, why don't we all just individually do better? A lot of people literally cannot afford to because of this ideology. Capitalism, not for nothing, is often described as the least crappy system. Right? That's basically how it's described. It's not inaccurate, but here's my pitch for anybody who does have those positions. Like, if you're listening and you're in charge of a big multinational corporation, or you're a world leader or something who somehow has enough free time to listen to this show, think about it this way. Even if you don't care about those billions of people living now and born in the future whose lives are going to suck, then maybe you'll care about this. Climate change will destroy the economy on a global level. There will be a little stopgap, sure. In the far extreme cases, yeah, there will be a little bunker quite wealthy people can live in with other quite wealthy people.
And Nestle will run all of them because they'll have all the water.
And they'll have a terrible history of getting along because they're not used to having to cooperate. And when climate destroys the ideology, when climate destroys the economy, that means no more profits. And I think that's a way to frame it, which is just as accurate as saying that it will hurt a lot of innocent people, but maybe hurting a lot of innocent shareholders will tip the scale. And I'm not joking.
I know you're not joking, but I had a vision of this person you're talking to, listening to the show, just going, all right, we got to keep the environment just healthy enough that the profits could keep rolling in.
Monty Byrne.
While I hang out in the stars.
I mean, do you think it's active like that, though? Do you really think that there are folks at the top that actively just don't care or feel that they're insulated from it?
It's not that they don't care. It's just, in order for this to actually happen, they would have to blow up their businesses to a large extent just to stop a lot of the manufacturing, a lot of the shipping, all of these things would have to cease. And, when you pull the brakes on something like that, even if it's a slow downturn to lowered levels of manufacturing or whatever it's going to be, it's not easy. And you end up, it's a bad PR move. You lose profits. So your company might go bust, or you might just get acquired by some other large company that then reverses what you're doing.
Well, let's take it back to the first story about Philip Morris trying to, making the stand on outlawing cigarettes.
Yeah.
But they have another agenda behind it, clearly. I mean, whatever. Yeah. You can say it's some sort of benevolent thing they're doing for the environment, people's health, but actually, even if it is that, they wouldn't be doing it if they didn't already have another plan in place. So maybe the things aren't mutually exclusive, but by and large, I think you're right. The capitalism forces those in charge to actively ignore or delude themselves about the harm that they're doing.
Dunbar's number has entered the chat.
Oh,
like
where's Putin?
yeah. All right. I agree. I agree with you guys. This is, please note, folks, that we are outlining problems, but we are not really proposing solutions.
No.
There
Do
are
you have any?
Yeah, there are other systems that
Send them
haven't,
to us.
yeah, that haven't worked. But we want to hear your take. We want to hear your solutions because the world definitely needs them. And I hope I didn't blow up the housing market near the Great Lakes, but I'm sure it's already been going through the roof like everything else, and it will continue to do so. But what do you think? Do you think that you can get $10,000 for debunking the statements that people have made about the election? Do you think that Philip Morris is totally on the up and up?
Or are they just going to be the biggest weed sellers in the next
Right.
10 years?
And what, if any, are your plans for you, for your children, for those who come after us that we will never meet, for adjusting to what will become a new and likely terrifying normal? We'd love to hear from you. We try to make it easy to find us on the internet, as long as that's still a thing.
That's right. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube at the handle Conspiracy Stuff. If you go on Instagram, you can find us at Conspiracy Stuff Show. You can find some of us as individuals on the social media. I am at How Now Noel Brown. I think, Ben, you got some handles, right?
I do. Here are two I'm comfortable disclosing on air. I'm at Ben Bullen, BOWLIN, on Instagram. I'm at Ben Bullen, HSW, on Twitter. Do tune in, folks, if you would like to see some adventures. I am going to be recording as normal with our awesome Stuff They Don't Want You to Know crew, but maybe from a different location for a bit. I'll be hoping to be homeward bound sooner rather than later, but we'll see where the chips fall. If you're already on the internet, go check out our YouTube page where you can see clips of us gesturing at each other over a Zoom call like so. Matt's not going to do it. Matt, this is
you guys aren't going to let me plug my socials?
You
Some
said
of that.
we've talked about it. You never do. You never want
I
to.
do. Find me on Instagram.
All right.
At goodmoms_bad_choices.
Love that account. Love that.
That's a great one. That's a great one. So I apologize, Matt. I apologize 98% wholeheartedly.
Okay, thank you.
For not pointing out. He does some good work, folks. Do check out his Instagram.
Don't forget about his other account, The Gateway Drug Pundit.
That's not mine.
No,
that's not
my
mine.
mistake.
The other one, though, find me there for sure.
Or you can find him. I think the MySpace is still Hot Sauce Lover.
Yeah, probably.
LOVA. Be very careful.
Yeah.
And if you are bored of the internet and you say, I am more of a verbal communicator, but do I have a story to tell? Then we have the perfect setup for you. You can call us anytime, as long as you're by a phone line. 1-833-STDWYTK. 3 minutes. Those minutes are yours. Give yourself a sick nickname. The only one that we consider taken is Max Powers, astronaut with a secret. Let us know what's on your mind. Most importantly, 2 things. Let us know if we can use your name and or voice on the air. And if you have a story that is more than 3 minutes, don't feel like you have to call 5 times in a row. Don't censor yourself. Write the story out. Give us those links. Give us those photographs. We love to see them. We read every email we get. You can write to us directly at our good old-fashioned email address where we are.
Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.